The day my HOA assessed me $500 for fishing with my distraught daughter was the day I resolved to burn their little kingdom to the ground. What they did not know was that I had money, patience, and enough resentment to employ every one of the rules against them, beginning with the lake itself. When I first came to Lakeside Estates with my daughter, I believed I had found the ideal spot to begin anew. The houses were tidy, the grass was manicured, and in the middle of it all stood the lake. 6 acres of serene water mirroring the sky like glass, somewhere that held out the hope of peace after months of tempest. My wife Rachel had died of cancer only a few months before, leaving me to bring up our 14-year-old daughter, Solon. Mourning was a bereavement that had a way of emptying us both out, and in those times silence was more audible than any noise. The lake was not like that. The first time Solon and I stood at that dock, she smiled, actually, genuinely, for the first time since her mother's funeral. Fishing had been our family's tradition, something we'd done together one of the last times before Rachel got too ill. Seeing Solon drop her line into the water, I hoped perhaps this location would provide us with a new beginning, perhaps a sort of healing. But what I didn't realize was that the same thing that led us here, the lake, would turn into the battlefield for a war I never meant to wage. It occurred on a peaceful Saturday morning. Solon and I had been fishing for almost an hour, her giggles ringing out over the calm water as she reeled in a little bluegill. For once, she wasn't dwelling on funerals or hospitals, just sunshine and fish. And then, out of nowhere like a clap of thunder, was the voice. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" I turned to see a woman marching toward us. Mid-50s, expensive athleisure wear, a face pulled tight with disdain, and a haircut that screamed, "Manager." She carried a tablet like it was a weapon. "I'm Karen Wellington," she announced, HOA president. "Fishing is prohibited. You'll be fined $500. Solon's smile dropped. Her eyes brimmed. I attempted to explain to Karen, reminded her that our realtor had assured us fishing was permitted, that it was why we'd purchased here. Karen's response was icy. Regulations were changed. Ignorance doesn't cover offenses. She gazed down at my daughter, and then back at me with a thin smile. "Maybe you'll come to fit into our community way of life eventually." That wasn't a good fine. That was a message, a threat. And I knew then, this wasn't about fishing. This was about control, and she'd just opened fire. Later that evening, I went into my inbox and checked my email. No message, no fishing ban, just a bunch of junk mail and nothing. But my gut was telling me Karen wasn't merely a rule follower. She was playing a much larger game. I ran into Merrick, a retired lawyer on the street, who verified it. Karen had been president of the HOA for 8 years, bending rules like putty, doling out fines at her whim. "She's run off families before," he growled, and her real estate firm bought their houses at discounts. Then there was Samuel, a retired banker who took me through spreadsheets he'd monitored for decades. The trend was unmistakable. Fines for new residents, particularly minorities, houses sold at bargain prices, and somehow ending up attached to shell companies associated with Karen. But the biggest surprise? The HOA didn't own the lake. It was leased from the developers, and the lease was set to run out. If Karen had her way, she'd purchase it through her company, cut off access, and construct luxury residences. She wasn't saving the lake. She was getting ready to sell it in pieces. If she believed she was the only one who had money to play this game, she was mistaken. Extremely mistaken. The further I investigated, the more it became apparent. Karen's ultimate plan involved the lake, but Meridian Development, the initial owners, were broke. They had maxed out their credit lines, they were desperate for money, and the lake was only worth $300,000. I could smell the potential like blood in the water. As a venture capitalist, I'd built my career on spotting distressed assets. And here it was. 6 acres of water, sitting on shaky financial ground, with a tyrant of a president betting her entire reputation on buying it. My allies urged patience. Let her announce her plans, Merrick advised. The more she spends, the harder she falls. Samuel added, when the timing is perfect, we'll strike. So I waited, silently, patiently, creating a shell company to conceal my identity. I called Meridian, initiated the wheels, and arranged the cash. I wasn't going to merely defy Karen's regulations. I was going to claim the field itself. Word apparently got around that I wasn't compromising. Overnight, there were violation notices galore. My mailbox too high, my weeds too tall, my garage door not the approved taupe. Even Solon's bike, parked in the driveway for 15 minutes, got us a ticket. It wasn't paperwork alone. It was spying. Someone had us under surveillance, waiting for mistakes to happen. My neighbors who had interacted with me were issued their own enigmatic citations. Maria Gonzalez, a nurse, was fined because her foster children were too loud at the pool. James Morris, a retired teacher, was cited for Christmas lights he'd used for 15 years. And then the worst blow, Solon came home in tears. The kids told us we're troublemakers, that we don't deserve to be here. Karen's friends were tainting the well, even at school. That evening I was thinking about moving, selling, getting out. But Merrick put a stop to it. That's what she wants. She has done it before. Families dissolve, houses sell for cheap, and she benefits. Don't give her the satisfaction. He was correct. Karen believed she could break me with gossip and fines. What she'd actually done was provide me with the fuel to put an end to her game once and for all. Where Karen doubled down, I operated in stealth. Behind closed doors, I sat down with Meridian's executive. They conceded Karen's proposal was weak. 18 months of financing, investor promises, but no money in hand. I'll do better, I said. $350,000, cash, closing in 7 days. They raised their eyebrows. Opportunity for me. Desperation for them. In 1 week, the lake was mine. Not the HOA's, not Karen's. Mine. To keep it under wraps, I purchased it through Thorncroft Holdings, a name with no tie to me. Not even Karen's spies would make the connection, while Karen paraded about, offering a reimagined lakeside community designed to create a property boom. She produced sleek renderings of lakefront residences and lounges, peddling fantasies she didn't realize had already escaped her grasp. I observed her, quiet, smiling. Because truth belonged to me now, and when the moment arrived, it would strike her with more force than the greatest bottle of fine ever could. Karen was unaware the lake had vanished, and I was waiting by the clock for her world to shatter. The HOA meeting was filled to the brim. Karen towered at the microphone, a slideshow behind her flashing images, new services, VIP lounges, a premier lifestyle. She addressed the crowd with the condescension of one who thinks she owns the world. And to fund these improvements, she declared, we'll impose a special assessment. $50 a month per household, an investment in your future. The crowd clapped, though uneasily. Then she turned her fire on me. Unfortunately, some new residents don't share our values. They undermine community spirit, financially unstable individuals who, frankly, drag down property values. Everyone understood whom she was talking about. My name wasn't mentioned, but the victim was obvious. I kept quiet, unruffled, observing her digging herself into a hole, because each word, each dollar she requested was creating a vision she couldn't provide. I wasn't simply waiting to reveal her. I was waiting for the perfect platform. And once that platform was established, I'd pull the rug out from under her feet for all to see. The day arrived at one of Karen's parties. She directed tents, wine bars, even hired a band. It was her opportunity to show off her lake. That was when I strode in with Merrick, Samuel, my attorney, and a uniformed policeman. I grabbed the microphone. Good day. Sorry, there's been a mistake. This isn't your lake. It isn't the HOA's lake. I bought it 3 days ago. It's mine. The crowd went quiet. Karen's face turned pale. You can't. This is HOA property. She snapped. I brandished the deed. No, Karen, it was Meridian's until I purchased it. And the recreational contract you enjoy quoting? It ended last week. As of today, this congregation is trespassing. Gasps spread. Murmurs ran. The officer moved forward. You have 15 minutes to vacate before we begin taking trespassing reports, I added, grinning. Karen's mouth fell open. The same woman who used rules against us was now caught by them. For the very first time, she wasn't in charge. I was by Monday. The community was abuzz. Some were upset about losing the lake. But when the word got out, Karen schemed to develop luxury homes and personally gain financially. The public backlash moved rapidly. The same individuals who used to shun me now stood at my door. Can our children fish in your lake? They asked bashfully. I acquiesced, so long as their families weren't sitting on the HOA board. Board members resigned one by one. The vice president resigned first, then another. Even Karen's strongest allies deserted her. Meanwhile, Merrick made a recording, Karen offering to wipe out transgressions in return for backing. Bribery on audio. Her support base evaporated overnight. Karen, the invulnerable queen of Lakeside Estates, was now its pariah. And the best part? I didn't have to raise a finger anymore. Her own corruption did it for me. 3 months on, the neighborhood was changed. The HOA was revamped with term limits and openness. The lake, which was christened Rachel's Lake in my wife's honor, was put into a community trust, safeguarded forever. Karen. She quit in shame, subject to lawsuits and investigations of her finances. Her home lingered unsold, her reputation in tatters. On the very first community fishing day, almost every family had appeared. Children laughed, parents exchanged stories. And for the first time in years, Lakeside Estates was once more a community. That night, Solon and I sat on the dock, rods across our laps, as the sun slipped beneath the water. Mom would be proud, she whispered. I squeezed her shoulder. I think she'd be proud of you both, because sometimes justice isn't about winning. It's about rebuilding what was broken and making sure no one can ever break it again. And if you're watching this, stuck in your own HOA nightmare, remember this. Never underestimate someone with patience, resources, and the will to wait for the perfect moment.